Hey guys, it's Oluvids, and we all know how much JRPGs Square Enix makes. But one in particular named Kingdom Hearts is pretty special because it's pretty much a big crossover game. The biggest crossover it has, of course, is with Disney, but there are actually other times where it crosses over with other Square Enix franchises. These include things like Final Fantasy and Einhander, but the one I'm going to be talking about is The World Ends With You. The World Ends With You was an RPG made by Square Enix that came out for the Nintendo DS way back in 2007. It was a brand new IP, however this one, unlike Kingdom Hearts, didn't have the instantly recognizable Disney characters to help it out. This game is basically about a group of teens that have to win this death game called the Reaper's Game. When you die, you have a chance to be entered into this game, and if you win, you get to come back to life. However, if you fail, you'll face erasure. You'll get daily missions for a week, and you'll need to pair up with the partner and complete them before your timer runs out. Alright, now that you got that little summary, I'll tell you now that Kingdom Hearts usually changes up the characters a bit to fit the narrative it's trying to tell. So, as I'm sure you clicked on this video for, I'm going to be comparing how the characters act in Kingdom Hearts compared to their original game. Also, a big disclaimer, there's going to be huge spoilers for 12v1 and some minor spoilers for Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. If you plan on experiencing 12v blind, then you could come back to this later, because it definitely is worth the blind playthrough. For everyone else, let's get this thing started. So first I'm going to start out with the interactions and motivations of the main character himself,
Neko Sakuraba. That's a mouthful.
No, it's really not.
So we meet Neko on Sora's side of Traverse Town right at the beginning. This Neko is already somewhat experienced in the game, so he's not like the Neko from the beginning of 12. At the beginning of the original game, he wanted nothing to do with others, and he always said that they'll just slow him down. While he does say no to Sora's offer to help him out, he does acknowledge that he needs his game partner. However, his partner, Shiki, isn't around right now, so he's currently using a Dream Eater to help him out, since he can't use his Psyches alone. The Dream Eater he uses is the Neko Cat, which is actually another thing that fits his character. In The World Ends With You, Neko's lifestyle revolves around an artist he likes named Cat. And of course, Cat's signature graffiti symbol is, well, a cat. Eventually, Neko does let Sora tag along and he tells him his name and teaches him how to use Dream Eaters. So again, he does seem kinda like Week 2 Neko because he's helping Sora out. Though he isn't like Week 3 Neko because he probably would have been a little less mean and would have helped him out right from the beginning. Anyway, the next part is pretty interesting. Neko leads Sora over to the 3rd district where he announces that he brought Sora and that they had a bargain. That's when young Xehanort comes out and proceeds to try to attack Sora. Neko then says that wasn't part of the deal and he tries to defend Sora. We later learn that Neko brought Sora to him because he said that he'd get him and Shiki back home. Now, Neko actually has done something like this before. Towards the beginning of the game, he nearly killed Shiki because one of the Reapers lied and said that not only was she a spy for the Reapers, but also that she'll let him out of the game if he does it. She also said that she'll kill Neko if he doesn't do anything. But luckily, in the original game, a guy named Mr. Hanakoma came in to stop this from happening. However, this time, of course, we don't really see the results of what happened. Though we can safely say that Neko at least got into a little skirmish with young Xehanort, so that's cool. Now, one part I do kind of find weird is that later on when Sora finds Neko again, Neko pretty much has no interaction with Rhyme here. In The World Ends With You, you meet Beat and Rhyme pretty early into the game, and on Week 2 and 3 we see that Neko considers Beat and Rhyme his friends. But here in Kingdom Hearts all he says is, no, that's not my partner. However, when Joshua comes in, Neko tells Sora that Joshua is his friend, so it's not like they're trying to make it seem like he only knows Shiki. I do kind of wish that Neko at least said something to Rhyme, or at least asked if she's seen Shiki or Beat. Anyway, Sora forgives Neko there and once again calls him his friend. Neko doesn't object to it this time, so I think that he may consider Sora his friend too. Later on when you go back to revisit, you'll see both Joshua and Shiki say that Sora's rubbing off on him. I think that this is because he's more openly calling people his friends and sharing any concerns he has. In this scene, Neko asks Joshua if he'll see him again in Shibuya. I'm kinda wondering, does he ask this because he knows who Joshua really is already? If we assume that he still thinks that Joshua is just another player like them, then his fate would probably be the same as theirs. Well, anyway, the main thing I want to say is that regardless of which part this is, you can tell that he really does care about Joshua. This sort of mirrors when Neko finally came back to life, and he says, "See you there," to Joshua. He also tells Sora thanks, and when Shiki says that Sora should hang out with them, that he'll see him in Shibuya. Overall, the Neko in Kingdom Hearts seems to be like early Week 2 to beginning of Week 3, though his bonding with Beat is left out and he barely acknowledges Rhyme's existence. Anyway, Neko was definitely the one we had the most to work with. Let's move over to Neko's partner, Shiki. Shiki, for the most part, is a pretty upbeat girl who likes to help people out, though on the inside she has a lot of self-loathing going on. Though in Kingdom Hearts, we never really go beyond her initial personality in the game. They do actually have her pull a Neko and lead Riku right over to young Xehanort. For Shiki, I'm not really sure if this fits her. If Xehanort was pretending to be a Reaper giving out the day's mission, then alright, sure, that works. Though if it wasn't, then I'm not really sure Shiki would sell someone out to get back home. Normally they get their missions from a text message, so maybe in the Kingdom Hearts versions a Reaper just comes in and tells you? Anyway, in case you didn't know, the appearance that Shiki has actually isn't her own. She actually looks a lot more plain than her stylish, outgoing friend, Eri. But I'm glad that Kingdom Hearts didn't really go into that because people need to go into Toei not knowing about that. Also, we never really saw Shiki fight, so there's no Dream Eater to compare there. But she does still have Mr. Mew, so she probably still uses him to fight. There's not too much I can compare for Shiki. She pretty much acts like how she does in the original game. I mean, yeah, that's good though. She isn't bad, so no complaints there. Next we can take a look at Beat, aka
Daisuke Nojo Beato.
Beat is my second favorite character in The World Ends With You, right under Neko himself, because of the events of week 3. During that week, we learn a lot about him, and he has a little heart-to-heart moment with Neko. Now, while Kingdom Hearts sadly doesn't really have him interact with Neko, it does have him interacting with Joshua more, which I found really interesting. He kinda interacted with Shiki too, but only in one scene. Apparently, Beat was given a mission by young Xehanort to take down Joshua. Of course, he got the same deal as the others, a promise of returning them home. It seems like Joshua and Beat are pretty familiar with each other. And sure, they have met in the original game, however, in every instance where Beat and Joshua were in the same place, they were actually enemies. Joshua is mainly in week 2, and by that point Beat is now a Reaper. He joined their side to find a way to bring back his sister Rhyme, who had been killed earlier in the game. Beat will fight you a couple of times, though of course the main interactions for Beat are towards Neko. The next time Beat interacted with Joshua was during the final section of the game, where Joshua's true motives are revealed. There's also the ones in the New Day, but that wasn't the real Joshua, so I won't count that. Anyway, Beat trying to get Rhyme back is pretty much in line with the original game. Though of course, week 3 also showed us his backstory and how he was pretty much someone who had no goals in life. He never really knew what he wanted to do with himself until now. He apparently wasn't always this riled up, but now he has the motivation to get up and do what he needs to do. In terms of his fighting style when he's alone, he uses the Kuma Panda Dream Eater. I'm not really sure what this is a reference to, but Beat normally fights with a skateboard, which is not present in Kingdom Hearts. Lastly, just like in Toei, Beat doesn't like hearing his real name because, you know, he prefers to just be called Beat. Next we can take a look at
Rhyme. Is she your game partner?
So in Kingdom Hearts, Rhyme apparently has lost all her memories except for her name. This is interesting because this does happen in Toei, but not to Rhyme. This is actually what Neku's going through during week 1 of the Reaper's game. To enter the game they need an entrance fee, and Neku's was his memories since the only thing he cared about was himself. Toei, Rhyme did lose some memories, but it was the memories of her brother Beat. But this was because it was what Beat cherishes the most. Anyway, unlike Beat, Rhyme always did have a dream, and apparently Joshua uses her dreams as portals between Sora and Riku's side of Traverse Town. She doesn't have any Dream Eater, so there's nothing to compare there, but yeah, personality-wise, she pretty much lines up with Toei 1. She's really friendly, and she's always hanging around Beat. Last but definitely not least, we have the one and only
Joshua.
Now, this guy is a very important character from The World Ends With You, and I think he's handled pretty well here. Joshua is a pretty mysterious guy, and he seems to enjoy getting on people's nerves, mainly Neko's, I guess. The latter part of that seemed to be a bit toned down because he will at least explain what he's doing in Kingdom Hearts, though he may still slip some remarks in.
I appreciate you saying that with conviction, even though you have no idea what you're talking about.
Hey!
Apparently when the Shibuya gang either died or got erased, in an attempt to keep them from fully fading away and possibly restoring them, he looked for a place to put the remnants of their dreams in. And of course, as usual, Traverse Town is the perfect world for the situation. Traverse Town is pretty much there for anyone who got separated from their original world. I'm not sure if Joshua bringing them there allowed them to get into the Reaper's game for a chance of coming back, or if they were already erased and now they need to be brought back from erasure. But anyway, using Rhyme's dreams and the portal, he's able to shift between Sora and Riku's Traverse Town to tell them what they need to do. He starts out on Riku's side, telling him that he needs to find Rhyme. He uses finding Sora as an incentive to get Riku to help him. And as I said earlier, he does interact with Beat, telling him that he's been tricked by young Xehanort. You know, now that I think about it, I wonder, did Xehanort see Joshua as a threat? Well, he'd be right to fear him because he's not a normal person. Earlier on, Riku asks why Dream Eaters don't attack him, and he says that it's only because they attack dreamers, even though he says he has plenty of dreams. Though, I think it's because he isn't exactly a normal human. I think that this is why Neko's even asking if Joshua will be with them in Shibuya, because he probably knows that Joshua isn't just another player at this point. I'll elaborate more on this in just a sec, but I also wanted to bring some attention to the line he says to Neko.
But Neku, I thought you couldn't afford to lose. Give up on yourself, and you give up on the world.
This line is what he said when he seemingly sacrificed himself to save Neko's life. This might not be the first time Neko heard it though. So far, the Kingdom Hearts Joshua seems to be the one from later on in week 2. He's much more cooperative than the earlier days. Now, I mentioned that Josh is not normal. Well, by the end of the first Traverse Town visit, he literally grows wings and flies away. This is kinda accurate to the original game. He does fly away, but not exactly with wings. In the original game, he is an ascended being that flies into the sky after the Reaper's game finally comes to a close. However, the one that does sprout wings and fly is the guy I mentioned earlier, Mr. Hanekoma. And, you know, now that we're bringing him up, in Traverse Town and Dream Drop Distance, you could actually see cat graffiti. And Mr. Hanekoma is also cat, so I'm wondering if he was there with Joshua at some point and made that graffiti art in Traverse Town. Hanekoma is kind of like Joshua's right-hand man, so I think it's possible. So yeah, Joshua is pretty accurate. They may have left out some shocking reveals that I won't go into here, but it makes sense because they're not trying to spoil too much in the Kingdom Hearts version. But yeah, in conclusion, I think these guys are pretty accurate for the most part. There were some interactions that I wish they did, but it doesn't ruin their appearance in Kingdom Hearts. Some big backstories were left out, but that's fine because I don't think Square wants to spoil too much of their own game. Well, I'm really glad that they came into Kingdom Hearts, and hopefully we can see the Wicked Twister show up in the future game. But I'd also be down with seeing the original cast show up again too. Alright, so that's been my comparison of the Toei cast between the original game and Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. If this video does really well, I'll do a comparison of the Final Fantasy VII characters compared to their Kingdom Hearts versions. But definitely, if you guys enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe and comment, you know, any thoughts you have on this. I'll be seeing you guys next time.